I didn't disappear in a dramatic way. No accident. No breakdown in public. No screaming goodbye. I simply stopped showing up. If you're listening to this, you might think disappearing means running. It doesn't. Sometimes it means standing still long enough for everyone to walk past you. The truth is, my life didn't collapse in one loud moment. It eroded quietly. Day after day. Choice after choice that felt small at the time. I used to believe that as long as I didn't do anything wrong, I was doing something right. That belief ruined me. Every morning I woke up with the same thought: just get through today. Not live it. Not feel it. Just survive it. I had a job that looked respectable. A routine that made people say I was stable. Relationships that functioned on politeness and shared calendars. From the outside, nothing was broken. From the inside, everything was missing. I don't remember when I stopped having opinions. At some point, my answers became automatic. Whatever you think. I'm fine. It doesn't matter. But it mattered. It mattered so much that my body started reacting before my mind did. I'd wake up exhausted even after sleeping 8 hours. My chest felt tight for no medical reason. I avoided mirrors because I didn't recognize the person looking back. I wasn't sad in the dramatic sense. I was numb. And numbness is far more dangerous, because no one notices it. I kept telling myself this was adulthood. That everyone felt this way. That wanting more was immature. So I stayed. I stayed when conversations felt like scripts. I stayed when laughter sounded hollow. I stayed when I realized no one would notice if I left the room. There was a moment, small, insignificant to anyone else, that broke me. I was sitting at a table with people who had known me for years. They were talking about plans. Futures. Trips. Promotions. Someone turned to me and asked, "So what about you?" I opened my mouth. And nothing came out. Not because I didn't want to answer. Because I had no idea who me was anymore. That silence lasted maybe 3 seconds. But inside me, something snapped. I laughed it off. Made a joke. Changed the subject. But that night, lying in bed, I realized something terrifying. I had spent years choosing comfort over truth. And now I had no truth left. People think regret comes from bad decisions. Mine came from not deciding at all. I didn't choose the job, I accepted it. I didn't choose the relationship, I adapted to it. I didn't choose the life, I tolerated it. And tolerance slowly became my identity. I started fantasizing about leaving. Not moving to somewhere beautiful. Not reinventing myself in a cinematic way. Just, not being here. No explanations. No justifications. No closure. The idea scared me. And that's how I knew it was honest. Because everything safe had already failed. I began planning in silence. Not in a reckless way. In a careful, almost gentle way. I paid off what I could. I minimized my possessions. I stopped making promises about the future. People noticed something was different. They said I seemed calmer. I wasn't calm. I was preparing to vanish. The hardest part wasn't fear. It was guilt. Not guilt about hurting others, I had already been doing that by being absent. Guilt about betraying the version of myself that once believed endurance was noble. But endurance without purpose is just a slower way to disappear. The night before I left, I sat in the dark and thought about calling someone. Anyone. I imagined the conversations. The concern. The questions I couldn't answer. So I didn't call. I left no letter. No dramatic message. Just a quiet exit. At dawn, I stood outside with a bag that felt lighter than the life I was leaving behind. And for the first time in years, I felt fear and relief at the same time. That's how I knew this wasn't running. It was the first honest choice I had made in a very long time. I expected the moment after leaving to feel cinematic. Like freedom. Like rebirth. It didn't. It felt empty. Not peaceful emptiness, the kind that echoes. The kind where every sound reminds you that there's no one left to witness you. I arrived in a place where nobody knew my name, my history, or my mistakes. That anonymity was supposed to save me. Instead, it exposed me. When there's no one to perform for, no role to play, no expectations to meet, you're left alone with the person you avoided becoming. The first days were simple. Too simple. Wake up. Walk. Eat when hungry. Sleep when tired. No schedule. No obligations. No one asking where I was or why I was late. I realized how addicted I had been to pressure. It gave me an excuse not to listen to myself. Without it, my thoughts grew louder. Regret arrived quietly. Not regret about leaving, that came later. Regret about how long I stayed. I replayed moments I had dismissed as not that important. Conversations I had half listened to. Opportunities one had declined because they required effort or vulnerability. I saw how often I had chosen silence instead of honesty. How many times I had nodded instead of speaking. I wasn't a victim of circumstance. I was an accomplice. That realization hurt more than any external failure ever had. There were nights I sat alone, staring at the ceiling, asking myself a question I had avoided my entire life: what do you actually want? Not what's expected. Not what's reasonable. Not what keeps others comfortable. What you want. The answer didn't come. Instead, memories did. Versions of myself I had buried. The one who used to argue passionately. The one who believed discomfort meant growth. The one who didn't apologize for existing. I mourned that person. I realized I hadn't lost them suddenly. I had negotiated them away piece by piece. People talk about burnout like it's exhaustion. It's not. Burnout is when you forget why you're tired. I tried to rebuild slowly. Not a new identity, just enough structure to keep me grounded. Small work. Temporary spaces. Conversations that didn't require a backstory. But even in anonymity, patterns follow you. I avoided closeness. I kept answers vague. I left before anyone could expect anything from me. Freedom had turned into isolation. One evening, I overheard a conversation between two strangers. They were talking about someone who had disappeared from their life. One of them said, "People don't just leave unless they're running from something." That sentence stayed with me. Because I wasn't running from my past. I was running from accountability. Leaving had freed me from other people's expectations, but also from my own. I had mistaken escape for transformation. And escape has a shelf life. The loneliness deepened in a way I hadn't anticipated. Not the dramatic loneliness of missing someone. The quieter kind, where you question whether you matter at all. There were days I didn't speak to anyone. Days where my voice sounded unfamiliar when I finally did. I began to understand why people return to lives that suffocate them. At least those lives confirm your existence. At least someone notices if you're gone. One night, walking alone, I realized something unsettling. I had erased myself so thoroughly that even I was starting to forget who I was. That scared me more than staying ever had. I couldn't go back, not because of pride, but because the person who left no longer fit there. But I also couldn't keep floating through life like a ghost. For the first time, I understood that starting over doesn't mean starting empty. It means deciding what you refuse to abandon again. I began writing things down. Not goals. Boundaries. What I would no longer tolerate. What I would no longer pretend didn't hurt. What I would no longer postpone until later. Later had almost erased me. Change didn't arrive as motivation. It arrived as responsibility. Responsibility to stay present. To choose, even when unsure. To speak, even when my voice shook. I started allowing myself to be seen, imperfectly, cautiously. And with that came fear. Because visibility invites loss. But invisibility had almost killed me. The second chance I thought I wanted wasn't a new life. It was a conscious one. And consciousness is exhausting. But it's real. And for the first time since I left, I wasn't just surviving days. I was inhabiting them. I used to think the hardest part of disappearing was leaving. I was wrong. The hardest part was staying after I came back to myself. Because once you're conscious again, once you stop numbing and start feeling, you can't hide behind ignorance anymore. Every choice carries weight. Every silence becomes intentional. Every, "I don't know," turns into a lie if you say it long enough. I didn't return to my old life. Not physically. Not emotionally. But pieces of it followed me. Guilt doesn't respect distance. Regret doesn't need an address. There were moments I wanted to reach out. To explain. To justify. To tell people I wasn't abandoning them, I was saving what little was left of me. But explanations are often selfish. They ask for forgiveness without offering repair. And I wasn't ready to repair anything yet. I had to learn how to exist without disappearing. That sounds simple. It isn't. It means answering questions honestly, even when the truth makes you less likable. It means disappointing people instead of betraying yourself. It means choosing discomfort over decay. There were days I failed. Days I slipped into old patterns. Days I said yes when I meant no. Days I felt the familiar urge to vanish again. Escape is seductive because it promises relief without effort. But relief without effort is temporary. And it always charges interest. I learned that starting over isn't about becoming someone new. It's about stopping the quiet self-erasure you've been practicing for years. One night, I sat alone and realized something that still unsettles me. No one had forced me to live the life I left. No one had trapped me. I had chosen safety over truth so many times that safety became a prison. That realization was brutal. And freeing. Because if I had participated in my own disappearance, I could also participate in my return. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just consistently. I started doing one small, terrifying thing every day. Saying what I actually thought. Asking for what I actually needed. Walking away when something felt wrong instead of waiting for proof. People reacted. Some didn't like the change. Some drifted away. Some tried to pull me back into the version of me that was easier to manage. And that hurt. But not as much as losing myself again would have. I stopped measuring my life by how acceptable it looked. I started measuring it by how present I felt inside it. There are still nights when the past visits me. When I think about the years I lost trying to be agreeable. The opportunities one declined because I was afraid of wanting too much. The versions of myself that never got a chance to exist. I don't romanticize those losses. I carry them. Because they remind me what happens when I stop choosing. If you're listening to this and thinking about disappearing, not physically, but quietly, please hear this: you don't need to vanish to start over. You need to stop abandoning yourself in small, daily ways. You don't have to burn your life down. You have to stop living it on mute. Leaving without saying goodbye wasn't my bravest act. Staying, fully, consciously, imperfectly, was. I didn't find meaning waiting for me somewhere else. I built it by refusing to disappear again. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this: a life lived honestly may be harder, but a life lived half asleep will eventually ask for everything. I paid that price once. I won't pay it again.